Well, hello everyone. This is Scott Roberts from Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance, and we're here. This is, I think, the 46th
48th, I
astronaut.
think.
48th. Okay. All
Think
right.
so.
Okay. With the Astronomical League, and you're watching Astronomical League live with special guest Kevin Schindler from Lowell Observatory. Um, Terry, why don't you go ahead and take it from here? And anyways, it's great to see everyone, and we're happy to be hosting Astronomical League Live again.
Well, thank you, Scott. We really appreciate the fact you are broadcasting Astronomical League Live. So thank you very much. I know you've been on the road quite a bit, so we really appreciate you being here. Actually, quite a few people here have been on the road and just got home.
Oh,
So why don't we go ahead then and start tonight? David Levy will be joining us just a little bit later. So, John, why don't I go to John Goss? He's past president of the league and our current media officer. So, John, how about if you kind of take it away?
All right. Thank you, Terry. It's been a couple months, I think, since we've had the program. Last month, April, everybody was focused on the Northeast Astronomy Forum, which takes a lot of energy and time to get that through. It's a great time to see people up there. Fortunately, this year I couldn't make it, so I didn't see anybody there. But maybe next year.
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about volunteerism, but before I do, there is a an event I'd like to share, I think. See, am I allowed to share, Scott?
yes.
It's
Are
because
you
I'm not
getting a
doing it right.
message here?
Excellent.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You might see there is a nice slide on here um, talking about the full moon. It occurred to me last night, is when I threw this together, that this month's full moon is a little unusual. Well, first of all, it happens on midday on the 12th, which is Monday. But really on the 11th, it's only 16 hours before full moon, the fullest full moon when it rises. So you might want to look at it then. And I remembered that, hey, when the full moon or almost full moon is right above the horizon at sunset or right before sunset, you can see some interesting stuff and an interesting phenomena. So that's what I pulled together here. On Sunday night, Mother's Day night, right at sunset, in fact, 5 minutes before sunset, go outside, look to the south, to look to the east, southeast, and you will see the full moon rising, creeping above the horizon. But at the same time, as the sun sets, you will also see the Earth's shadow start rising along with the full moon. So you'll have the full moon, which will be fairly muted because the sky is still fairly bright. You'll have that low above the horizon within Earth's shadow. And how do you know it's a shadow? Well, it's kind of a dark or darkened gray blue band that's in the east or southeast at this time. As the sun drops lower below the horizon, that shadow rises somewhat and it starts to dissipate because the sky itself is darkening. So that is something really, I think, cool to look at. A lot of people see this and they don't understand what's going on. They don't give two thoughts about it. But Sunday night, see if you can spot it. And there's another phenomenon called the belt of Venus, which has absolutely nothing to do with the planet Venus. It's supposedly taken from, if I can remember this right, the Greek goddess Aphrodite wore a belt, and that is supposed to be the belt going around the Earth of kind of a pinkish, reddish, orangish glow. So you'll see that just above the dark band of the Earth's shadow. Go outside Sunday night, see if you can see this. On other nights, it's not so evident, or the full moon or the moon won't be there because it'll be either higher above the horizon out of all this muck, so to speak, or below the horizon. You can't see it. So that's something to think about. That's a little project for you to do on Sunday night. Got to have clear weather, obviously. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk a little bit about volunteerism. As you know, I've given a number of these talks throughout the past couple of years. And I'd like to explore this a little bit further tonight. Start out by saying, you never volunteer for anything. Well, that's completely untrue because volunteers are what are needed to make hobby clubs work. If no one volunteered, then we're all sunk. So we'd cease to exist pretty quickly if we didn't have the volunteers. So I'd like to look at this a little bit further on why people volunteer. And I know a lot of the past membership or past leadership, they have their own stories, and I've talked to a number of them, and I've managed to plop them into different categories here. Number one, camaraderie. It's kind of neat. You're part of an organization, Astronomical League, perhaps, or perhaps your own astronomy club, in which you have a number of people who come together every month or every so often and discuss the issues and try to get things going. And it's kind of fun doing that because you're right in tune with what's going on in the world of astronomy, amateur astronomy. Plus, just by doing this, you learn something new. You're always in the forefront, talking to new people, and they're telling you things that you don't know. And that's kind of neat. It expands your horizons as far as this amateur astronomy goes. And that falls in line with being part of something even greater. Astronomical League wise, we're across the United States. We stretch into other countries. So it's kind of fun. You meet people across the United States you wouldn't know, or in other countries. But I think, this is my opinion, probably the most important reason to get involved in all this is by influencing young people, trying to get them interested, or not only trying, but helping them in their interest in amateur astronomy, expanding it, making it more worthwhile to themselves, letting them know that this avocation is certainly worthwhile, and it can be a lifelong pursuit. It could be a lot of fun in their lives. So I'm going to spare this a little bit more. Don't worry, I'll come back to a little bit what I just said. But I'd like to say a little bit more about volunteerism. I talk about signing up and helping out. Well, what does it take to be a good volunteer? Well, basically three things, really. You got to have the ability to do the job. Okay, well, you got to have the time. We're all stretched for time these days, but you got to have it because you got to put time in to actually do whatever needs to be done. And you got to have the desire. You really want to do it, or otherwise you're kind of going, well, yeah. So, but if you have all those three characteristics, you'll be a good volunteer and be able to help out your community and your astronomy club or astronomical league, whatever. You'll be able to do that really well. So here's another way of looking at it. If you've kind of thought about, maybe I should volunteer. Well, I'm considering looking at these people right here. Let's say you have been a club officer and you really liked it, and you want to help more. You want to work with more than just your club. Well, think about being a volunteer in the Astronomical League. If you're an officer and maybe your term is nearing completion, well, you'll have some time freed up. Maybe you want to continue. Maybe you want to share your talents, your organizational talents to help not only your club, but the region you live in or nationwide. Think about volunteering for the Astronomical League. We have 10 different regions that the league is divided into, and each of those regions has a subset of officers. Obviously we have our national officers, which, president, vice president, treasurer, and so on. But each region has a similar set. So you might want to start out there and start thinking about it. I know right now there are 3 of us, which are volunteers. I'd like to ask a few questions, and I'll start with myself so everyone knows where I'm coming from on this. So, John, what got you into volunteering for the Astronomical League? I'm glad you asked that. A number of years ago, past league president Bob Gent was at a regional conference here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I attended, and he got up and talked about the Astronomical League and its need for volunteers, and kind of went through a short list of what had to be done, and said at the end, if you're interested in helping out, please come up and see me. And everyone in this room, there's probably about 50, 60 people, and they're just kind of, not really biting at the chance. And I started thinking, well, He's asking for secretary of the Mideast region of the Astronomical League. I can do that. It doesn't take too much time, and I can certainly write down notes and do correspondence and stuff like that. So after the meeting concluded, I volunteered my services. And unfortunately, fortunately, that was my start, and I progressed up through the Merrill organization and into the national organization and so on. Now, I see two right there, and I'm going to pick on Don Knabb first. Don, can you tell the crowd here why or what got you into volunteering, maybe at the regional level or your local level, or what? What do you have to say about that, Don?
Well, I've been volunteering at the local level. Boy, it's going to be soon be 20 years. I guess that kind of dates me. But I've been observing chair and treasurer for longer than I probably should be. But I actually was able to shed the observing chair to some other good members in our club who are helping out. I'm still treasurer. But as the Mideast region, I was at a StarQuest, Green Bank StarQuest, an absolutely wonderful gathering of astronomers and amateur and professional. That was 2019.
Hmm.
I just retired a couple years before that and was still trying to find my new groove. And a really nice man, Terry Trees, was the chair at the time.
Mhm.
And I was attending my first ever annual Mideast Region annual meeting. And maybe 25 people in the room, perhaps. And Terry made the announcement after he went through the meeting that he had to step down. He was having some serious health issues he had to deal with, and he was looking for someone that might be interested to take over the chair position. Well, as you said, everyone in the room was sort of hunkered down and him-hawed, and no one stood up. I
I know
didn't.
the look. I know the
Yep,
look.
I didn't stand up. I certainly didn't hadn't occurred to me before until Terry said that. But he planted the seed. He planted the seed at that meeting. And during the rest of the event, I know that I spoke with you out in the camping field. They asked, what is this about? What does the chair of the Mideast region need to do? So Terry planted the seed. I think you poured some water on the seed and helped it germinate. And so I thought about it for a few days, and then I contacted Terry by email, and we exchanged a few emails. I said, Terry, I'm willing to step up and give this a try.
Mhm.
And that's 6 years ago now. Time is probably not too far off when I should look at passing the baton to someone else. Just
Mhm.
keep things fresh. It's good to do that. But I never for a moment have regretted what I did. I'm so glad to be part of the league. Um, as you said, the people I've met through the league, it's been amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
and my local astronomy club, I have made lifelong friends at my local club, people that are like brothers to me. And
I think
the
that's
league,
that's one good thing is you do make friends
Mhm.
that you certainly wouldn't have if you didn't join, if you didn't participate. And the friends are for Don and I are both members of the Mideast region. We now know people all over this Virginia and Pennsylvania and Maryland and West Virginia and
Mhm.
so on, Delaware. We know people all over, and it makes it a lot more fun, I think. I really enjoy that. Thanks, Don. I want to move on to Terry
Sure. Yeah.
Mann,
Yeah.
because she is our current national vice president, and she has been president before. And I think you're the chair of the Great Lakes region as well. And there's probably a few other things I don't know about. What got you involved, and what have you gotten out of it? I mean, why volunteer, in your opinion? You're muted. You're muted, Terry. Terry.
Because I love astronomy. I mean, astronomy is something I've done since I was a teenager. And I came into this a little bit different than you guys did. I didn't know anybody from the league. I had been a member of the league through the clubs that I belonged, and I had been president and vice president, and held offices in local clubs. And I wanted to do more, and I wanted to kind of get involved. So I called, I picked up the reflector, and there was the call for nominations for officers. And I called Barry Beeman, and I said, Barry, I would really like to help. And he said, hey, we need a secretary. And I said, oh my gosh. And I ended up running for secretary, and that's how I came into the league. But oh, over the years, you meet so many interesting people and you learn so much. It is worth every minute of it. The one thing I would say is, depending on where you're at, the most important thing is to enjoy what you're doing, but have the time. If you volunteer, have the time to do the job. That's something, once you volunteer, you'll meet so many great people and have such a good time that you'll find time is there because you make the time, because you do like what you're doing so much. And, and that's what took me to be chair of the Great Lakes region. I've met so many people, and it's really nice to go to a conference somewhere or go into another astronomy club that you don't know, and you sit down and immediately you feel we're right at home because everybody's so nice. And that's pretty much been my experience.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm looking at these characters I'm seeing on my screen right now, Scott Roberts, all the way down to these people. I would not have known any of you people, without stepping forward like this over the past few
Exactly.
years. And it just goes nationwide, all the different regions. You tend to meet a lot of different people and think, well, so what? But one of the things that you learn from everybody, somebody in Colorado is going to be doing things differently than we do in Virginia, and they may be interested in different things, and so you learn about all that. You expand your horizons, as they say. It's a very very fun thing. And as you said, one of the key components is that you have to have the time to do this, and it kind of works both ways. You have to have the time, but it is what you make it. So if you don't put much into it, well, okay, you don't put as much time into it and all that, well, you're not going to get much out of it either. But if you want to do it, you can do it. And it opens up a big expanse. And it is a lot of fun. Okay, unless you guys have anything else to say about this, I'll conclude with this final slide here. I want to emphasize that really, if you are an officer right now in an astronomy club and want to continue or want to expand your reach, want to share your knowledge, especially your organizational skills, think about volunteering. I just said that it takes as much time as you want to put into it for most things. Some things, you got to have them done on time. But by and large, the more you put in, or the more time you put in, the more you're going to get out of it. So if you just have some time to contribute, think about it. Think about starting out at the regional level. About like I did. I was secretary, and I tell you, secretary it's easy. You don't put in hours a week. You put in an hour every quarter, maybe. I don't know. You don't do all that much, but there are jobs that have to be done, and someone has to do it. So go ahead and think about this. One more slide, and I think I'm done. Oh, that's just my final slide here. But I want to thank you all for listening on this, and give it some thought. If you are in a position to volunteer and you have an inclination to do it, I'll put Terry Mann on the spot, and I'll say, contact her, and she'll point you in the right direction. And I don't think you'll regret it either. Anyway, that's what I have. Thank you for your time and all that.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the league wouldn't be here if it was not for the volunteers, and a lot of local clubs just definitely wouldn't be there either. And it is a great hobby, and you will meet fantastic people. So thank you very much, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, how about if we go to Don Nab? Don, it's good to see you. I know you just walked in from a camping trip, so you're just getting jumped right online too.
Yep, that's right. We were camping in deep in the woods of Pennsylvania, where there was absolutely no cell signal since Tuesday. So it was a nice break, actually, to tell you the truth. So
I bet.
all right. So I have a few slides on what's going on in the night sky. I didn't want to spend too much time on it because we have a lot to do here, but let's take a look. I will share my screen. It's coming through, okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so a few highlights of the main June 25 night sky. Um, as always, I'd like to point out, in case we have some new viewers online tonight, that every month John Goss does a great service to amateur astronomers across the world, really, especially here in the US, by putting out a night sky guide. Now, our club just finished teaching beginner astronomy classes to the local night school, and I hand this out to every student, and I tell them this is more than a map. This is a story where John leads you from, point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, leads you across the night sky. So these are great resources to have, and we so much appreciate John doing this every month, put some time in for this. And in addition to the sky map, there's always a couple other graphics he puts out. This one actually is past. This was from the beginning of the month. But it's, he always puts out one. If you can only see one event this month, see this one. This was always a fun one. I always try to find and see the things John tells us to see. And here's the moon one. He put out a moon one for a very tricky object to see on the moon, on the far edge of the moon. But these are always fun, always entertaining, and great for beginners, especially this main sky map. You can walk yourself around the sky if you don't know the sky. How do you find them? It's pretty easy. You go to the Astronomical League website. You got to scroll all the way down to the bottom, go to Navigating the Night Sky, and you click, and up comes this page. So, and here you can see, here are the May Navigating Night Sky. Here's the one about the Mare Oriente, about the Moon and Mars. So it's a great resource. I really encourage everyone to take advantage of it, whether you're a member of the league or not. So lunar highlights, the new moon is on May 26th and June 25th. Here's a picture I got a couple weeks ago. I call this the smiling moon. I guess some people call this the old moon, the new moon's arms, but I saw it as a nice smile in the sky. So I had to take a picture of that. But a new moon is a great time to observe any of the deep, dark sky objects that we might want to look for. This time of the year, galaxies are a great thing to see, globular clusters. Full moon. The full moon is fun. A lot of amateur astronomers will poo-poo the full moon. It's so bright, but I enjoy the full moon. You don't have the contrast necessarily as when you have the Terminator view, but I still enjoy the full moon. So the May full moon is on May 12th. This is called the Frogs Croaking Full Moon. These names come from, I picked these up from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada calendar that's put out every year, a great calendar. And then the June full moon is on June 11th, the trees fully leaved full moon. I really like the June full moon. The moon is so low in the sky. If you can get an open field where the moon light is shining on tall trees, it lights them up so beautifully. So I love the June full moon. So this is the fully leaved full moon, and that is on June 11th. The planets, for through the winter we had a wonderful series of planets to see. We still have some, but it's not quite what it was. Mercury is now in the pre-dawn sky, but at the end of the month, it goes behind the sun, and then it reappears in the evening sky on June 6th. Venus is in the pre-dawn sky, shining so bright, minus 4.7 magnitude. Mars is falling further and further behind us in our race around the sun, but it's still visible. It's still a red dot in the sky. It's in Cancer the Crab right now. And late in the month, it's going to move into Leo. And I have another slide coming up in a moment to show you the moon and Messier 95 and 96 and Mars are all close at the end of June. It's going to be a nice sight in the sky. Jupiter is also falling behind. We are speeding ahead of Jupiter. It's going to drop into the glow of the sun pretty early in June. So catch it now, catch it in May before it drops into the muck of the setting sun. Saturn, Neptune, they're in the pre-dawn sky. They're very close. Uranus is out right now. We won't be able to see it. It's going to reappear in the pre-dawn sky in late June. So really, there's a lot of happening in the pre-dawn sky, and Mars is the one happening mostly in the evening sky. So here is that site that I mentioned in the previous slide. Here's the moon and Mars. This is on June 29th. and pretty close to a whole couple of galaxies here in Leo the Lion. And while we're in Leo, one of my favorite things I always have to mention is the Leo triplet. This is a great little grouping of 3 galaxies. 2 of them are Messier objects, one is not. If you want an idea what it might look like in a telescope, I took this with my C-Star. There are much better pictures out there of the Leo triplet, but this is more of a representation of what it might look like, in a pretty good sized telescope at a dark sky site. You can get all 3. These are the 2 Messier ones. This is the Hamburger galaxy up here. And it's a beautiful sight in the eyepiece. You need a fairly wide view eyepiece to catch all 3, but it's a beautiful sight in the sky. My favorite constellation is Leo. What else? Oh, this is globular cluster time. The globulars are coming back. M3, M5, probably the most brilliant one in the northern sky, M13 in Hercules, and M92. It looks like I caught a little bit of a meteor or probably a satellite going through there. But I really enjoy looking at globulars. M13, you just get lost looking at M13. It's such an amazing view in the eyepiece. And this is one of my favorite asterisms. When we have night sky observing events, I like to show, especially young people, some of these interesting asterisms in the sky. This is one of my favorites. This is called the 3 leaps of the gazelle. So here we have 3 pairs of stars, all part of Ursa Major. But the story is that the gazelle leapt away from Leo, was chasing it, and as it leapt across the sky, it left 3 pairs of hoof prints in the mud. So this is the 3 leaps of the gazelle. Always fun to see, always fun to show to people with doing a laser tour of the sky. And here's, I want to show you a little asterism that a friend of mine, actually past president of our club, showed me. We all know this part of the sky, Corona, Hercules, Bodes, but she pointed out to me another asterism in the sky. We can make up our own, of course, anytime. So here's Arcturus. It's the same view of the sky. I just removed the constellation lines, but here's the martini glass in the sky. It was always a lot of fun, especially to show if you have young people around and their parents are hanging around, something to show their parents. Here's the martini glass in the sky. So additional sky guides other than what the AL puts out, you can get them from skymaps.com or What's Out Tonight. You can just do skymaps.com is the address, and just do a search for What's Out Tonight, and this will come up. These are great guides. They're out there every month for free. And I hand these out to all the students that are beginner astronomy classes, and they always appreciate them. So I think that's all I have for tonight. Wanted to keep it fairly short. So back to you, Terry.
Thank you, Don. Let's see. David has made it. Hello, David. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. It's good to be here. Let me get
Well, I'm glad you joined us.
Okay, so I'm sorry I'm late and I'm very glad to be here. It's been kind of a bit of a rough week. I was at the Texas Star Party where I gave a lecture that went very well, but I had a couple of bad falls while I was there. I wasn't hurt or anything, but it shook me up a little bit. And the other thing is, last Saturday night, I had a pretty serious car accident. I was
my
not
gosh.
hurt or anything, except that when the airbag went off, it scratched both of my wrists, and they're healing right now. But I lost the car, and it's probably in a way a good thing because I'm slowly recovering and trying to get my life back together. It's good to see all my friends at the Astronomical League. And I do have a quotation today for you. And I think the appropriate one right now, let me see here, is going to be from Tennyson. And I've always loved Tennyson. His poetry has been really inspiring to me. beginning when I was in college, and I wrote an essay about the elements of science in memoriam. And I really did enjoy that. And I still love Tennyson, but today I'm going to quote his final poem. It's called Crossing the Bar. Wrote it in 1889, the year he died. And he requested that anyone who publishes a catalog of his poetry, please end it with this poem. I'm not ending anything right now, but I'd like to read this poem. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea, but such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. Thank you, Terry, for letting me do this so late. I'm doing a lot better now, and back to you.
Well, we're glad you're doing a lot better. It sounds like you have had a rough week. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to do that. And we will be on next month, so we'll make sure we let you know earlier. All right. Well, thank you very much. I am going to jump in here. Chuck Allen was going to be here, but he had something come up. So I'm going to just do a very short report on some of the things we've got coming up. And let's see, here we go. Let's go back to the beginning here. And we do have Alcon coming up. Alcon is really, we have got probably maybe 30 registrations left, and that's about it. We will be closing registration for Alcon either on May 31st or before if we fill up. And Alcon right now is on June 26th through 28th. And during that time, we are at Bryce Canyon. Bryce Canyon's Astronomy Festival will be going on at the same time. So you can also attend that. And also, there are about 16 speakers that will be speaking during that time. And our vendor room is filled up. We have quite a few vendors that will be there. And ZWO, Spencer's Camera, Stellar View, Pegasus Astro, Explore Scientific, Dark Sky Utah, Advanced Telescope Systems, Sky and Telescope Magazine, you name it. We got a bunch of people that will be there as vendors. So we feel very honored that we have them too. So please, if you can, join us at AstroCon next month. I'm going to jump down one more. There we go. I am going to say we will be back on June 6th at 7 p.m. That should be June 6th at 7. I forgot the 7 p.m. Matt Rhino from the Milwaukee, Michigan Astronomy Club will be joining us. I don't have a title yet, but mark your calendars. We will be back here on June 6th. So what I am going to do is go back and get Kevin in here. Kevin, thank you for hanging out with us. As soon as I can hit the right slide. Kevin's going to be speaking. Oh, sorry. Kevin will be speaking about Mother Road to the Stars, the space heritage of Route 66. And Route 66 has so much heritage. I mean, I love Route 66. I think that would be amazing. And I see my internet went, I do have a problem with my internet, so I probably just locked up again. But let me introduce Kevin for those of you that don't know him. And I don't imagine there's a lot of people that don't know who you are, Kevin. If you're involved in astronomy and you've been at Lowell Observatory, Kevin Schindler is the historian and public information officer at Lowell Observatory, where he's worked for 30 years. He has authored 8 books and contributed to a biweekly astronomy column called View from Mars Hill for the Arizona Daily Sun newspaper. In May of 2023, he served as the astronomer in residence at the Grand Canyon. And a fun fact, and Kevin, you will have to explain one of these. He has both a fossil crab and an asteroid named after him. How in the world did you get a fossil crab named after you?
Well, in a previous lifetime, my background is actually in geology and paleontology back in the late Cretaceous when I was in that field. And so I did a lot of fossil collecting out of Florida, and we did field work in Jamaica and other places. And there was a new crab species, fossil crab species, that they must have run out of names because they decided to use mine on it. So yeah, this fossil crab, it's impressive or not? I'm not sure, but
I think it's impressive.
and then asteroids. Lowell Observatory has found a lot of asteroids, and so periodically they'll name them after different people. So, gosh, I'm looking at the group here. I think several of you guys have asteroids named after you. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yep, it is. Okay, well, Kevin, then how about if we turn it all over to you, and thank you for joining us. I know you just got home too, not too long ago. You have been traveling. Seems
Right.
like it's the time of year.
Yes, I was down in Mexico with my wife, a nice downtime, and the weather was great. And we were on the largest freshwater lake in Mexico, Lake Chapala, and it was just lovely. And we just got back last night.
My gosh. Well, thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy and you're probably tired.
Oh, no, this is great. This is always fun talking about this stuff. And as you were saying, Terry, thanks for the introduction. Route 66 is one of those magical things in the United States. There are a lot of historic roadways, but Route 66, nicknamed the Mother Road by, of course, I drew a blank. I've got his book right over here. Grace of Wrath, John Steinbeck. Um, and there's also other nicknames for it, the Will Rogers Highway, America's Highway, and such. But it's a very storied roadway. And next year is the centennial of its commissioning. And as discussions came up about celebrating Route 66, at Lowell Observatory, we're just, as the crow flies, half a mile from old Route 66. Plus, we have a car that's at the observatory. It's a 1911 Stevens Duryea motor vehicle, and it was owned by our founder, Percival Lowell, and he would take it out across northern Arizona. And the car is actually older than Route 66. So it's been around for a long time, and it still runs. We take it out for parades and stuff like that. For years, we had it in the July 4th parade in Flagstaff, and a couple of times I rode in it in the back dressed as Percival Lowell. So I still have to send apologies to anybody who had to witness that. But it's a neat car, and so we were thinking, okay, we want to be connected. The observatory wants to be connected with the celebration, and then I started thinking, looking at the path of Route 66, and it's almost stunning when you look at the path, and astronomy things beyond just Lowell Observatory. And so that's what I want to kind of share tonight. And some of it's happenstance, but I think one of the great roadways of America, with all the astronomy heritage, I think it's a great topic. And so let me just get the program up here. And you see it? Title slide?
Yes.
Mother Road to the Stars. Okay. So when I started looking, I realized, holy cow, there's a lot of connections with astronomy. First of all, a couple of things about Route 66. Next year's the centennial, so 1926 is when it was commissioned, and then it was decommissioned in 1985. There are still a lot of segments along the 2,400 miles that are still active, but it's not Route 66 per se. And Route 66 went across 8 states, started up in Chicago, came down Illinois, Missouri, just a corner of Kansas, and over to California. And what I found stunning when I started looking at it is this is a map roughly of the pathway of Route 66. And each one of these X's is some space themed thing that is along the way. And so there's really a lot. As you can imagine, there's a lot in Chicago, there's a lot in the LA area, but there's stuff in between here. And so, some of it's scientific research centers, some of it's public outreach, some of it is the cheese of Route 66. You have like the biggest hot dog and the biggest this and that. There's a couple things like that. Even UFO sightings, a famous UFO sighting. So what I thought I'd do is just do kind of a whirlwind road trip, starting in Illinois, and just kind of going through it and highlight some of the space themed things. And I'll point out that we're doing an exhibit at the observatory about this. And we're also looking at a potential book idea because there's, as you mentioned, Terry, there's so many different angles of Route 66 and so many different ways of celebrating it. The cars, the people, the signs, so much, but the astronomy in the space, I think, is pretty cool. And I think that's worth sharing with more people. So let's start this little road trip in Illinois. And so what I've done is I've got some postcards for each state, just to kind of show the pathway through it. And as I mentioned, Illinois, as you can imagine, especially with Chicago, has a lot of connections. So we start in Chicago. Here's the official beginning of Route 66, the sign. And then we think about University of Chicago. Holy cow, what a heritage of astronomy going back to the 1890s. This is George Ellery Hale, who founded so many amazing observatories, American observatories, Yerkes, Mount Wilson, Palomar, set up the 200-inch there. Just an amazing person he was involved with. So we think of him. Here's a picture of Yerkes Observatory, because Yerkes was connected with the University of Chicago. That was kind of the research facility. So here's an early picture. You can see one person in here is not on staff. That's this guy right here. This is an Albert Einstein visit with the staff. But Yerkes and University of Chicago had some remarkable scientists through the years. I haven't included any modern day astronomers, just because I learned long ago that I don't want to annoy anybody by saying something wrong about them. So, people that aren't here anymore, I'm safe. But these are just some names of people who worked at, directed, or otherwise were affiliated with University of Chicago Astronomy Department. And this is a who's who. This doesn't even include a couple Nobel laureates, but it's a pretty impressive field. So we think about the development of astronomy and especially astrophysics in the late 19th, early 20th century, and this was one of the leading centers of it. Of course, we can't talk about Yerkes without Edwin Hubble, who got his PhD from University of Chicago in 1917. Here he is at one of the Yerkes, at the Yerkes Observatory. And I think it's kind of interesting when we look at a couple themes of Route 66, that Hubble was born along the future path of Route 66. He went to school in Chicago, and then he worked most of his career in Los Angeles area. So his whole life was centered around that historic road. And of course, places like Adler Planetarium, which is an important center of astronomical education and outreach. And, something that we're all here for is to share the awe and wonder of space and the inspiration we get. And that certainly happens at Adler. So Chicago has this really amazing heritage of research as well as outreach and education. And I'm kind of an astronaut nerd, so we can't talk about Chicago without talking about some of the astronauts who grew up there or were born there. Gene Cernan, Jim Lovell, and I keep hitting it there. Anyways, these are just some of the moonwalkers that grew up in the Chicago area. Okay, David, who's this? I say
That's
David
not Bart
because,
Bach, is it?
what's that?
That's not Bart Bach, is it?
This is Ray Bradbury.
Oh, yeah.
You see, I put David on the spot because he's written so many eloquent books, and Ray Bradbury, um, he's from an area about 25 miles from Chicago, and he was a prolific writer, as is David. Um, he wrote the screenplay for It Came from Outer Space, a classic American movie with really incredible acting. And then
Why did you put me on the spot for that, Kevin? Because I was thinking about Bart Bach when you showed the picture of all those lovely scientists standing in front of the 40-inch,
oh
and one
yes,
of them was Frost. And Bart always talked about those three scientists as the three meteorologists, hail, snow, and frost.
yeah, oh, that's perfect. So Bradbury also wrote classic Mars novels, and interestingly, he's one of the writers that wrote with a very Lowellian um, perspective with these canals that were supposedly on the planet and bringing water to the dying planet and such. So Bradbury was born just a little bit off of Chicago. So you can see there's science fiction, there's outreach and education we've seen so far. If we dip down a little bit, you might see the X here, Wilmington in that area. This is a classic Route 66 stop. It's called the Launching Pad, a restaurant that was there. But right next to the launching pad was the Gemini Man, and the Gemini Man was one of several statues along Route 66, about 20 feet tall, made of fiberglass. And there were the so-called Muffler Man, and they were used for different advertising. So this one was the Gemini Giant. It was opened right around the time Gemini was sending the Gemini missions were going up with two astronauts on board. And so this is part of the quiche of Route 66 that I like. And connecting it to Flagstaff a little bit, if you've ever been to Flagstaff at the Northern Arizona University, this is Louis the Lumberjack. If you look closely, they kind of have the same pose and everything. The hands are in the same position. Louis was supposedly the first muffler man and sat on Route 66 at a cafe in Flagstaff called the Lumberjack Cafe. And now there's one Louis outside of the football stadium and one inside. But the same origins of the muffler of the Gemini Man, Gemini Giant. So there's a little bit of the Route 66 cheese that makes the pathway so cool. If we duck down again here, boy, I keep putting you on the spot, David, but notice where the X is here. And it looks like there's not a dang thing there. But there is something there. And this was the birthplace of a young fella. If you look front row, second from the left, his name is Clyde Tombaugh. And Clyde Tombaugh was born in Streator, Illinois, not far off the beaten path of Route 66. And again, just like Hubble, Clyde Tombaugh would spend at least the early part of his career and make his name along Route 66 when he ended up in Flagstaff here. But this is Clyde when he was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, maybe, when he was still living in Streator. And if you go to Streator today, there's this big mural there. There's a Pluto sculpture that was just added a few years ago. And so they certainly love Clyde Tombaugh there and celebrate them. So let's go down a little bit further to Missouri. And Missouri, St. Louis, as you can imagine, has some things like that's where some of the Apollo spacecraft elements were built. But there's a couple of other places here too. There's one called Marshfield. And in Marshfield is where this guy was born, Edwin Hubble, in 1889. And then just a little bit away, gosh, it's maybe 20 miles away, Harlow Shapley was born. And it's remarkable that within this short amount of distance, two of the great American astronomers of the 20th century, if not all time, were born. They certainly didn't know each other growing up, but they both came from the same place essentially. They both ended up at Mount Wilson and overlapped there. I wouldn't say that they were friends, but they both worked for Mount Wilson for a while. Shapley ended up leaving later on. And Shapley was one of the astronomers involved in the great debate of 1920, talking about the solar system, the universe, and the scale of the universe, and whether these fuzzy spiral nebulae were island galaxies or island universes, or were all part of the same galaxy. So they came from just really close together, right along where Route 66 would eventually go. If we go down to Kansas, there's just a little bit of Route 66. And in fact, if you look at the map, there's really not much along here. But I have to point out that there's this community right in the middle here called Lowell, and it's not connected with astronomy at all, but the name does derive from the same name as Lowell Observatory. The Lowells of Massachusetts. So that might be a little bit of a stretch with the connection with astronomy and Route 66. But what I do like is if we look at the state flag of Kansas, well, not state flag, but if you look at the flag, it has it on here. But here's a sign from Kansas: ad astra per aspera, to the stars with difficulty. And so the state itself has that connection with astronomy. And of course, we could talk more about, if we get further away from Route 66, there's the Cosmosphere, one of the great science museums in the country. And David, I think, is going to add something here. Were you raising your hand, David, or were you shooing me away?
No, I'm just going to say that Kansas is one of the couple of states in the country that's actually passed a law stating that Pluto is a major planet when it is visible over Kansas sky. I thought I wanted to throw that in.
It's legal. And in fact, David, we'll touch on that a little bit later when we get to Arizona, because Arizona's claim along the same lines. So let's head to Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, if you go to Tulsa, there's this really great space museum, Tulsa Air and Space Museum and Planetarium. And in recent years, they've done a lot of astronaut events, in addition to this great just exhibits of aircraft, spacecraft, kind of similar to, if you go further down to Weatherford. Weatherford is the hometown of Tom Stafford, who orbited the moon on Apollo 10. And they likewise have this Air and Space Museum. This is devoted specifically to him. And he just passed away a couple of years ago. But this is another museum celebrating aircraft and spacecraft. And there's one more place in Texas. If we go, another place that celebrates an astronaut, Alan Bean, who walked on the moon on Apollo 12, is from this little community right here. And there's the Wheeler Historical Museum. And if you go there, they have the statue of Alan Bean there, and a little bit of information. It's not a museum dedicated specifically to him, but it's a great place to learn about the Apollo program. So you can see through Texas, there's so many different aspects of space. A lot of astronomy, but also astronautics that's there. And we keep going west through New Mexico. And New Mexico has a couple of fun places. If you go to Santa Fe, and if you go to the plaza at Santa Fe, there's a building called 109 East Palace. And 109 East Palace doesn't look like anything. You go there and you say, what does that have to do with space or science or anything? And if you go inside, there's a little plaque on the wall, and it talks about how this was the entry point for anybody that was going to be working up at Los Alamos, where they're developing the atomic bomb. And that's maybe a stretch from astronomy and space, but I don't think so. I think it's all connected. So everybody from around the world who worked on the Manhattan Project and went to Los Alamos, they first checked in here. And their stories about the locals, always wondering what was going on. There's a lot of foreigners coming into town that would always go to the plaza and then they were gone and nobody saw them again because this is where they checked in and then they went up to Los Alamos and that was all top secret. So these people all disappeared from Santa Fe. Another New Mexico, and here's that plaque that's there. Another New Mexico connection is in Albuquerque. And with these, I'm not giving every single one, but just kind of an example. But in Albuquerque, it used to be called, I think, the Atomic Missile Museum or something like that. It's now the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History. And this is a great place. They have models of Fat Man and Little Boy, and really, really do a good job of promoting the heritage of space science in New Mexico. Now, if we go to Flagstaff, we've got 2 states to go, Arizona and California. And Flagstaff, of course, is the center of a lot of astronomy. But before we get to Flagstaff, there's this little place, Winslow. And Winslow has a place that had a profound impact on space sciences, on human exploration of space. And that's, of course, Meteor Crater. And Gene Shoemaker, the father of astrogeology, is the one who proved beyond doubt this was created by an impact from space. And it's still used by scientists who still go here to study. The astronauts who went to the moon trained here. It's a great analog to the moon. And I should point out that Artemis astronauts are coming to Arizona and training just like the Apollo ones did, going to some of the same places, including Meteor Crater. So that Meteor Crater as a training ground is not just a historic footnote, but it's something that's still happening today. And if you drive to Meteor Crater, at some point, you might hear something about movies that were made in the area. Another kind of fun space connection is I think the arts. We talked a little bit before about some of the statues that were up there. I think this is neat. Starman, this again, like, I don't know, Jeff Bridges, I think, won the Academy Award, or he was at least nominated for his part in this movie. But the final scenes of the movie take place in Meteor Crater. And so here we have some Hollywood along Route 66 before you get to California. If you go to Meteor Crater today, you won't see this building. You'll see more like this. But this was the American Meteorite Museum that Harvey Ninninger ran here for years before he moved it to Sedona and other places. But right outside Meteor Crater, he had this vast collection of meteorites. And this was one of the places you stopped. If you're going to Meteor Crater, you're going to stop here to at least see an amazing collection of meteorites, if not actually buy your own personal versions of them. So let's get to Flagstaff. And Flagstaff, I'm not going to go much into the heritage of Flagstaff because there's so much. And I mean, I know I've talked about this a lot before, but Flagstaff, one thing that I think is interesting is when Percival Lowell set the observatory up in 1894, it was 18 years before Arizona was a state. He chose Flagstaff, and at the time, Flagstaff's nickname was the Skylight City because of the brilliance of the stars. Well, jump ahead to the 1950s, and well, going back to 1894, when the observatory was established, there's no electricity, there's no outdoor lighting problems. Electricity hadn't reached it yet. But by the 1950s, it was becoming a problem, at least for the astronomers. And the observatory, Lowell Observatory, acquired a telescope from Perkins Observatory, a 72-inch diameter telescope. And they found a place outside of town to put it, where it was a little bit darker. But there were searchlights that periodically would shine up in the sky. And so some of the leadership of the observatory, including Earl Slifer, who had once been mayor of Flagstaff, he talked to his buddies in downtown and said, we don't want to get rid of this light, but can we do something to kind of moderate how it's used? I mean, does a searchlight need to be on at 2:00 in the morning? And so the city leaders wrote an ordinance, and this was the first outdoor lighting ordinance in the entire world. right in Flagstaff. And through the years, Flagstaff continued to write new ordinances, update the current one. The county that it's in, Coconino County, develop ordinances. And in 2001, when the then International Dark Sky Association, now called Dark Sky International, when they started their program of recognizing communities who protecting the dark skies, they named Flagstaff as the world's first international dark sky city. And Flagstaff continues to be a model for how to protect dark skies. So that's a big part of Flagstaff's heritage. But of course, there's a lot more. This guy we talked about earlier, he migrated west to Kansas and then he ended up in Flagstaff and discovered Pluto in 1930. That's Clyde Tombaugh. Pluto on the left here has such a strong heritage of Flagstaff. Flagstaff has been called the home of Pluto because virtually every major discovery related to it has connections with Flagstaff. Early searches, its discovery by Clyde Tombaugh, the first detection of its atmosphere, that its largest moon, Charon, were discovered off of photographic plates taken in Flagstaff. The New Horizons mission has scientists that work in Flagstaff. So it has this really strong connection. And in fact, it's so strong that every year we hold an I Heart Pluto Festival, as it's called. And this year, one of our featured presenters was one David Levy. And hopefully, David, you had as much fun as we did having you here.
Oh boy, did I ever. That was clearly the highlight of the winter for me. I just loved it.
And it's a lot of fun. I just wish Clyde had discovered Pluto maybe in June instead of February up in Flagstaff, because the weather can be a little challenging. And there's also in Flagstaff, like a lot of these other communities, there's a strong amateur community here, amateur astronomy community. So Flagstaff continues to be a great place to do research as well as to do outreach. And I pick on David again because David was part of a contingency that came for the grand opening of our Marley Foundation Astronomy Discovery Center. For years, the attendance at the observatory was getting to the point where we didn't have room. We didn't have room for visitors to park. We didn't have room for more things to do. So you would have one long line at the telescopes and such. And so last November, we opened this new facility. It's 40,000 square feet. It's got 3 stories. This is the inside from the second story looking down. Up on the top story is what's called an open deck planetarium. You're up there and, we thought about building a traditional planetarium, but we've got the world's first international dark sky city. We've got dark skies. So we built a planetarium, but didn't bother putting the roof on. We used the real dark skies of Flagstaff. And these seats are heated. And so it's a delightful experience. You sit back and look at the stars. And there's this screen that pops up. So, you can do stargazing, point out things. And then, oh yeah, if you look really closely, you see that little smudge. Here's a close-up of the Andromeda Galaxy. And so it's really a fabulous experience. This grand opening was such a stellar event that it brought in some of the great names in astronomy. These 2 characters right here, for instance, you'll recognize from tonight's program, Scott and David Eicher, who does a lot with you guys also. So it was a really great time to celebrate astronomy and to kind of kick off this new era of astrotourism. And astrotourism is becoming a major element of the tourism community to the point that in June, I'm going with the local Flagstaff Visitors Convention and Visitors Bureau to promote astrotourism, because it's not just astronomers who recognize it, it's the tourism industry that realizes a lot of people are wanting to see dark skies and reconnect with the cosmos. And so how do they do that? They go to places like, Lowell Observatory or Kitt Peak or a lot of other places. And so I think it's really gratifying in current times where we're losing a lot of programs. I think there's this desire by people to to simplify a little bit and just reconnect with the universe around us. And so it's really great to be able to participate in that. I wanted to just throw this picture up here. This is a picture of Mars that was taken with the Clark telescope by one of our educators, Dylan Short. And Dave Eicher just shared this on his Facebook page a few days ago. But if you ever look through the Clark, I've never seen this view through the Clark of Mars, but it's pretty spectacular. And you can see one of the ice caps there and everything. And if you look closely, I don't know, maybe you can see some of the canals, depending on how much you drank earlier tonight. One more thing I wanted to mention about Flagstaff is, Flagstaff is the home of Pluto, and we have this Pluto festival, and it goes beyond the science. It's a community pride, and so one of these community members that takes pride is called Mother Road Brewing Company, and Mother Road Brewing Company is named after Route 66. And for the last several years, every year for our iHeart Pluto Festival, they make a different beer and make a can for it. So our first year was Pluto Porter, and it featured nitrogenated beer because Pluto has nitrogen. And so each year there's these different themes we have. Here's Clyde with his 9-inch telescope. This is the year that the observatory acquired that 9-inch telescope in an auction, and it's now in display right here behind Scott and David right there. And so, again, representing, I think, not just that science is done here, but science is celebrated here. And then there's the Galaxy Diner, astronomy themed. So let's go west of here. If we go to Kingman, and for those of you who might be familiar with Kingman, maybe you're on your way to Vegas. That if you're in Flagstaff, you drive here and then go north from Kingman to go to Las Vegas. You might wonder what the space connection here is. Well, in 1953, there was a supposed UFO crash. There are 3 different UFOs that were sighted. Just a couple of years ago, a TV station in Phoenix revisited this. And there's a fellow who even wrote a book about it called 7 Days in May, the Kingman UFO Story, by Harry Drew. And perhaps not surprising, but I've tried to get online to find a copy of this. And I think it was probably self-published. I haven't found a copy anywhere. I'm going to be visiting Kingman in a couple of weeks, and so I hope to find a copy there. But I think it's part of the space lore of Route 66. Whatever you think about UFOs or UAPs, as they're often called now, unidentified aerial phenomena, again, if you're going to find it anywhere, it seems like it's going to be along Route 66. Well, let's end the tour. Oh, I forgot I added this because we're talking about Arizona, and where else in Arizona? Arizonas are kind of funky this way. There's a state representative named Justin Wilmoth, and he got the idea of officially recognizing Pluto as the state planet. So you have state flowers and state fossils and state birds. He said, let's have a state planet. So he introduced this bill. I went down to, this is on the floor of the House. I went there to testify on behalf of Pluto, along with our director, Amanda Bosch. And Pluto was, through some good-natured bantering on both sides, it was approved as Arizona's official state planet. My thought is, because of this, we should change the state flag. The state flag features the copper-colored star and 13 rays of the sun. We should change it to this, so that Pluto is at the center. So there's no confusion about where the state, who has the state planet is Pluto.
That's right.
So let's end. Now we'll go to California and to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, like Chicago, that general area, has a lot of astronomy stuff along the way. Again, over here is where Santa Monica is where Route 66 ends. But if you go in that area, here's our friend George Hale again, who is the maker of big telescopes. the Yerkes 40-inch refractor, the 60-inch at Mount Wilson, which was the largest telescope for years, the 100-inch at Mount Wilson, which was the largest telescope for years. And then Hale was involved with the development of Palomar's 200-inch telescope named after him. So Hale did a lot for astronomy out here. And then remember Hubble, who started out in Chicago, just like Hale, ended up here and made some of the fundamental discoveries of astronomy in the 20th century. For instance, he had this plate he took in 1923, and he thought he found several novae. Realized this one wasn't a nova; it was a variable star, a Cepheid variable, and that allowed him to connect distances of galaxies with their velocities. And then he also developed his famous tuning fork, kind of the same model that we use for galaxies today. It's changed some, but it hasn't changed that much. So this is an example of some of the stuff that Hubble did out there. Of course, Griffith Planetarium is a center for astronomy research and inspiration. Jet Propulsion Laboratory, founded in the 1930s, is a center for space studies. So there's so much out there. I could spend all this time on California, but again, there's so much that's out there. And then we get to the end of the trail of Santa Monica Pier. So to me, I just find it fascinating in thinking about, the centennial of this great American road, the Mother Road, that there's so much space along it, and it's not like it was planned, but scientific research, astronaut training, astronomy education, some of the classic Route 66 heritage of big signs and big statues and stuff like that, UFO sightings. There's just a little bit of everything. And to end, I thought I would just show this final slide showing the flags of each of the states along Route 66. And, this is a little bit weak in some ways because most states have a star in them, representing, a member of a star represents that state, or you have stars representing the original 13 states. But if you look at all of the flags, they all have astronomy connections. Some of them are just the single star, like Texas. The Zia is the cardinal directions with the sun. Oklahoma, though, you're looking for the astronomy, and maybe these crosses could represent stars, but in the official description of Oklahoma's flag, that's sky blue, representing the sky. Kansas has a rising sun, and so on. So every state has some astronomy-themed element to its flag. So to me, as a historian, I love Route 66. I love astronomy, and I think it's kind of neat to see what the connection is. So that's kind of a basic introduction. I kind of give this program partly as just kind of an experiment because I think it's kind of fascinating if there is a connection. I'm not sure if others do, but in folks I've talked to, nobody's ever thought about this angle of Route 66. So I think something we should pay attention to, especially in the next year, as all these centennial events are happening. So Terry, I'm done blabbing. I could talk about this all night because I think it's really cool. But David will start calling me out on things, and Scott will start telling stories about how he defaced this book he has with all these important signatures of all these astronauts and a who's who of people in space. And I
Yep.
summarily defaced it, and he still doesn't talk to me because of it.
Oh, come on.
I'm still apologizing.
No, I'm proud. I'm proud that you
Oh,
defaced it.
well,
So,
thank you, Kevin. That is a really interesting take on 66. I never looked at it like that. I mean, it was always just so historical and something I thought would be really cool to do, but you've added a whole new section to Route 66.
Yeah, I think it's something, especially next year with the centennial.
Yeah.
In 2 years, nobody will care, but next year there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
interest. And so I think it's a good angle that we can use.
Yeah, you'll have to keep us updated on what you do either at Lowell or around there. I would love that. Sounds like something that would be a lot of fun to attend.
Yeah, in fact, we were talking to Mary Demuth earlier, who's online here. Her daughter is the head of the archives at the observatory, and her team is creating this exhibit. Um, and so in our exhibit hall, Percival Lowell's car, nicknamed Big Red, is right in the middle. And on one side is going to be an exhibit about Big Red and its connection with Route 66. On the other side is kind of what we've talked about tonight, this countrywide connection with the Mother Road and space.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to know more about that as it gets closer.
And David had his hand up, and I thought I could talk long enough to where he would maybe forget he was going to say something, but go ahead.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I think if I had missed your lecture today, I would have had no choice but to go out and have another car accident. Your lecture was outstanding. It's one of the best astronomy lectures I've ever heard. It is outstanding with a capital O and a capital G. I really, really enjoyed it. I was thrilled by it. It kind of made my whole day. And thank you, Kevin.
Well, thanks, David. And I
Very
think
good.
that auto accident probably created some damage, but I'll take you for what you're saying. And I have to say again, I appreciate you and Scott being up here during the grand opening of the Astronomy Discovery
Oh,
Center.
thank
because
you. Thank you. It was absolutely fantastic. And for anybody that wants to see one of the most amazing outreach centers in the world, dedicated to astronomy and space exploration, go no further than Lowell Observatory. You're going to really love it. And, we got special tours. Kevin, took us into the library, and it was just really a lot of fun. And I want a copy of the shot that you took of all of us standing around Clyde Tombaugh's telescope. So
I'll send that to
very
you.
cool. Very cool. Thank you.
That is really cool. Yeah, I didn't know you had Big Red. I didn't realize that that was there.
Well, when you come and visit, I'll show it to you. It's sitting in the middle of our Putnam Collection Center, and the Putnam Collection Center is part library, part archives, part offices. But the car still runs, and so when they take it
Wow.
out, they put it on these little rollers and push it out the doors, and
Yeah.
then start it and drive it. And
Oh my
if
gosh.
if you're lucky to be here at the right time, you can get a ride in it.
There we
Oh,
go.
really cool. Yeah.
That would be. That car would never be the same.
That's so
Oh, that
cool.
sounds like a lot of fun. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, and I'm sure our audience did too. That just takes a whole new spin on 66, but please do keep us updated on any activities that are going on. You're more than welcome to come back anytime if you just want to talk for 15 minutes or so and update us
I
on what's
appreciate
going
that.
on.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Love to have you come back. So, all right. Does anybody else have anything that you'd like to say, or is there any questions anywhere?
Well,
I guess I should ask.
no, I wanted to add, I put in a little segment of a PowerPoint about Annie Jump Cannon. Today is the anniversary of her acceptance by the International Astronomical Union for the Harvard, what became known as or is known now as the Harvard Spectral Classification System. And I think it's called the OBAFGKM system. Okay. I think it should be called the Anti-Jump Cannon system, but
Yeah.
one of the amazing and venerable women astronomers, and she opened the door for many others. I was in reading about her. I did not know that she was deaf. And so that was something I learned today. But what an amazing and dedicated astronomer. Classifying over 350,000 stars. The old-fashioned way, looking at individual spectra, identifying it, and marking it down in a log. So no computers. She was a computer. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I
she did
think
amazing work. There was actually a theater that put on a play about her history here. And a
Oh,
lot of people that were in the astronomy club I was in, it was held at a college. We all went, and it was amazing to learn about her and the things that she did and went through. So
mhm.
really did enjoy that. But that's how I kind of knew some of her history in more detail. Yeah, she was an amazing lady, really.
And one of her peers was, am I pronouncing it correct? Her last name was Leavitt, Henrietta Leavitt. Is that right?
Yes.
And she was also deaf.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so
They
they were
had her in the
friends. And
play too. Yeah.
yeah, so, but maybe, I mean, gosh, I would not wish anyone to have, a challenge like that. But in another way, when I think of people, I mean, let's just take Stephen Hawking, for example. You have some sort of challenge and it allows them to focus on certain aspects of their lives and to improve upon them. And, you know, uh, these people all did really, truly amazing things that we're still paying honor to today.
Yes.
Scott, if I could just
Definitely.
mention that that story you talk about the computers at Harvard. It's a fascinating story, and Davis Sobel did her book A Glass Universe. That's all about that. And if you
Hmm.
haven't read it, Davis Sobel, she's such a great writer, but I think really covered that really nicely.
She's a
Yeah.
great author too, and very nice person.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's
Wonderful.
an amazing story, really, when you get into more details about it, because, it's just hard to believe. I mean, those women were just incredible women that were doing things that, like you said, old style, no
Yeah.
computers. They were really doing the brass tacks of
Not
what
not
it
just
actually
incredible
was.
women, but incredible
Yes, they
people.
were. Definitely.
And
So
Hidden Figures, the book and movie, really brought great attention to the computers of a later era, but the
yeah,
ones of the 1800s, 1900s, I don't know if they can be more impressive, but they had a lot against them. They were remarkable.
that's true.
Yeah, they were.
That's true. When we
Definitely.
went when we went to the Vatican Observatory, there's also a group of women that did incredible work on classifying star positions and this kind of thing. So, it's there's been so much work done by so many unsung heroes, and I
True.
think that we'll be uncovering them for a long time.
That's true. So, all right.
Okay.
Well, I would like to thank everybody for being here and joining us tonight. And please mark your calendar for June 6th, and Matt Rhino of the Milwaukee Astronomical Society will be with us. And as soon as we get a title and an announcement made, we'll get that published. So thank you all very much. And thank you so much, Kevin and David and Don and John Goss and Scott. Thank you again for broadcasting. And I will turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, before you go, Terry, what can you say about how many spots are left for the Bryce Canyon event?
I'm
Still there?
sorry, I just locked up. How many
You were-
spots? What?
I thought I just like
I'm
shocked
waiting
her,
to come
shocked the
back. It's
living
like,
daylights out of her. No, I was wanting to know how many spots are left or how many rooms are left for the Bryce Canyon event for AstroCon.
I do know Monday night is completely gone because they had a limited amount of rooms because
Okay,
we have all of our council coming in. That's about 25 of us for a big meeting on Tuesday. It'll be an all-day meeting. And Don has that smile on his face. Don will be there too.
Yep, I'll
It'll
be
be a
there.
long day.
Yep.
But after that, I do believe they have at least 15 or 20 rooms available each
okay,
night. Now, I have not checked it lately. That was probably about a week and a half ago, and
yeah,
more people have signed up online.
sure,
We are going to be really close to either cutting it off before May 31st or on May 31st, and we're going to have very, very minimal rooms left if
yeah,
we get that far.
yeah.
So they're trying
Well,
to get in everybody they can.
if you wanted to go to this, I mean, it's gonna be an amazing event. Incredibly, I mean, if you have not been to Bryce Canyon, this is just that alone is worth the trip. But add the layer of the Astronomical League, you know, pulling out all the stops and incredibly dark skies. It's just breathtaking. So, um, you know, I'll be there and looking forward to seeing you there too. So,
Yeah, and we do have some NIA speakers coming. Some of our youth speakers will be there.
oh
So
wow.
we have at
Okay.
least two of the youth speakers that won awards this year that will be speaking during the week, during the few days there. So, and Scott, thank you for the awards that you underwrite. We all really
Oh,
appreciate what Explore Scientific does.
it's our honor and responsibility. So happy to be playing a part. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Terry. And, you know, we want to again recognize the Astronomical League. It is the world's largest federation of astronomy clubs with over 300 clubs and over, is it over
Over
30,000?
25,000.
25,000 members. Okay.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, a ton of people. And, you know, more likely than not, if your friend's into amateur astronomy, they're somehow touched by the Astronomical League. So, all right. You guys have a great weekend and keep looking up. Good night.
Night.
Good night.